Oh, thank you so much for tuning in. So good to be here for the Wednesday night hump. Had a little bit of a spill here with my drink for the evening before the live stream. I have iced tea all over my feet right now, so I'll pretend like they're not a sticky mess. Didn't have time to clean it up. Well, a little bit. Oh, God, must be tired. I'm slipping, literally. But other than that, I'm fine. I hope you guys are doing well. Um, I always start out by saying thank you so much for taking the time to tune into these live streams. It's always greatly appreciated that you do tune in, you do take the time. We have so many people that join in the course of the hour that we do these live streams. And I always like to say up front that it's always a pleasure to be able to do this for so many people. Scott, how you doing, sir? Welcome. Hope you're well. Hope everybody is well. So if you check out my most recent post, you'll see that I'm in the middle of doing a guitar body painting. And let me first start off by saying that painting guitars. Mr. Watson, how you doing? Mr. Allmark, hey, how you doing? Welcome, guys. Glad to see you guys are here, all healthy and doing well, I hope. So yeah, if you check out my most recent post, you will see that I am working on finally got my paint tint up and started painting that guitar body. Now, this would be the second time in my life that I have done the painting of a guitar. And the first one was Monica Butterscotch. I took it from an all black to a more of a butterscotch color. And with that first project, I had the help of a luthier there in Singapore to guide me along and help me with the steps. This time, I don't have that. But I do have the things that I do remember, the things that worked, the things that didn't work with that one. Tellies and strats aren't that much different. But it is a long process. I'm in day 4 of painting that guitar, and there will be a day 5 tomorrow. Um, Actually, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, day 4. Yeah, that's correct. And there will be a day 5 tomorrow because I did primer work on it on Sunday. I'd already done primer work, but I gave it a last shot of primer. And as you remember, the body was pretty much well dented up. I filled in all those spots with epoxy and sanded those down so they were smooth. And then I went to do the coloring. Color took 3 days, and now I'm in the final stage of shooting the nitro, which will take 3 days. So it's not something you want to rush. Is it going to be perfect? No. Waiting for the curing time is the most important step. That's right. So this dude's white on the inside. You know, actually, genetically, that is not incorrect of a statement, actually. I have to say my paternal great grandfather was British. So, if that helps you, whatever point you're trying to make there. Um, yeah, that waiting time. But I find that I'm using an acrylic, and you can shoot those. You can do 3 shots a day if you space them an hour apart. Wait a day, do the next 3. 9 total, 9 of the color and 9 of the and 9. It's like 9, 9, and 9 is what basically I was taught while I was doing the first project in Singapore. And so 9 shots of your base coat, 9 shots of your color, and then of course finishing with the nitro in this case. And that's three times a day for 3 days on each one of those. And that is of course to help with the off gassing. If you don't do that, if you don't allow for it to off gas between those coats, what can happen is that you'll put a coat on a semi-dry coat. That top coat may dry, but the coat underneath is still wet. It'll start to off gas, and it'll start causing that top coat to crack. Now, if you're going for a relic, kind of look, then I guess that's one way of doing it, but you want to try to avoid that. I had a paint run on the horn, and I had to go back and fix that. I had to sand that down and first figure out what was the best sandpaper to use without burning through the color coats that I already done. Did that and then sanded. After I finished the sanded between the color coats, and then sanded. Now I'm sanding in between the final nitro. So I did a spray of nitro today, and then waited a while, sanded that down using 800p dry. And tomorrow I'll do the same thing, and then Friday I'll do the same thing, and by then it should be done. And I should be able to move on to just let it sit. They tell you, to be honest, these paints dry really fast, and curing is going to take, whatever amount of time that's going to take. But honestly, in the case of these bodies and doing rattle cans, um, you can have the whole thing done in a week. You can be done in a week. I've seen guys that have gone on to their final wet sanding and buffing the next day after shooting their last nitro on it, coat on it. And so, it really depends. I think the thing to do is really just make sure that in between those coats, you give it a day. And that's what I've been doing. And it takes time. It's not something that you're going to do in one day. And as Scott says, waiting for the curing time is the most important step. And with the spray acrylic, you can do that relatively quickly. But I may let it sit for a week after I do the final spray on Friday of the nitro, and just let that sit for a week, and then do the final, you know, little bit of work. Well, not a little bit of work. It's going to be a lot of work. And sanding in between is no joy either. That's why I don't like doing it. And Fern won't touch it at all. That's why Fern does natural finishes. He'll only do a natural finish. He won't do any kind of color finishes. So that kind of left me in the situation where, okay, I had to do it myself. But the spray tint works out great. The mask, it's got a ventilation mask that came with it. That's great for spraying nitro. Wasn't so much worried about the color coats, but nitro is something you want to wear a mask in. And the weather's been great. It's been hot here. Right? We've had ourselves a hot spell in Europe, if you haven't read. And yesterday, it was, for here, it was pretty warm. I have to say the issue, I lived on the equator, so I know hot. I would have to say the problem here really is that the European sun is very intense. You know, it's very intense, very, 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 you know, intense sunlight. So, but that helped, especially with the nitro, because warm weather like that, the nitro can was warm, and the coats went on very evenly. So there was that. So that was a good thing. Let me catch up here in the chats. Dwayne Johnson, no, I can't even say I wish that a little bit. Hello, hope everyone is groovy. Lincoln, we are groovy, sir. Welcome, welcome. Good that you are here. Moonshines, hey, bro. It's Van Dan from India. Your new subscriber. Hey, man, welcome. Good to have you here, Moonshines. Good to have you here. Thank you so much. Hi, bro. Where are you from? Well, I'm right here from Amsterdam. I'm shouting out to you guys. Hey, Moon. Yep. Are you Barack Obama? Boy, boo, boo. That's a question that I never get asked. That's an original thought. I like original thoughts like that. Not. No. So that's what I've been working on. It's a pain in the ass. And trust me, this is I'm not doing this again. I'm trying to get it as right as possible, which, to be honest with you, you can get a pretty good finish. You can get a very nice finish with rattle cans. And so it's going to be okay. Is it going to be perfect? No. But pretty damn close. As a matter of fact, right now everything is on it very evenly. I fixed the runs. The nitro is going on well, and each coat of nitro melts into the next coat of nitro. So that certainly has its benefits as well in terms of getting your surface even. And it's just a lot of work. And so I'll do this. I will decide whether I use gold hardware. I have both gold and chrome hardware. I'm thinking I'm going to go with the gold, just for the sake of having something fancy. It is a Squire. The body's a Squire. The next is a Squire. It's all original, just refurbishing it. So maybe gold would be nice. Like the 40th anniversary, I was thinking. During the last what are you talking about, pal? Well, Tam, that is a good question, and the timing, it couldn't be even more perfect with that question because I'm going to jump into tonight's topic. I just dropped in. Hey, good dropping in timing. welcome to you. Well, tonight we're going to talk about gear. We're going to talk about creativeness. Thank you so much for creative mess. Thank you so much for showing up, at least for 3 seconds. We're going to talk about modern cheap gear, and during the live stream, and in a lot of the live streams that I've done, I always get that question about what do I think about modern gear. Of course, coming from my standpoint of having a lot of vintage gear, guitars in particular that I go through, and how I guess people say, well, you've had some experience with the vintage stuff. How does it rate against the modern stuff? And even in the last live stream, we had that question come up. So I thought, mining for topics for tonight, that I thought that would be a good one to go into a little bit more depth tonight. So we're going to do that tonight. We're going to talk about that concept. Now, we have to have a couple of definitions here, so I'm going to go through those first. How do Scott, does he mean military gear? Low guitar gear. Not military gear. No. This is a guitar channel. Oh, goodness, I'll stay a while low. I'll play 6-string here in Scott, but that's good. We're in the right place. Now, we talk about guitars here, and other kinds of gear and other kinds of stuff. So, yeah, sit in. Just listen in. I think you might find this interesting. Back in the day, cheap gear was often really just junk. I'll be honest with you guys. Inconsistent, bad fretwork, and bad electronics, and cheap hardware. And growing up in the 70s, and then really getting into guitar in the 80s, you didn't have a lot of options. It really wasn't until, I would say, around 83 or 84 when the Japanese stuff first started coming over to the States that you have an opportunity to have a guitar in that price range that wasn't a piece of junk. As a matter of fact, to this day, again, I wish I had that Squire Bullet that I bought, because that was a Japanese Squire Bullet, first run Japanese Squire Bullet in white. And those are, I still to this day, I don't know what happened to that guitar. I really don't. I can't even tell you. Every other guitar in my mind, I know what happened to it. That one is a mystery. But they're very highly regarded these days as very nice, not just nice, but really great guitars. And so that was, in my mind, is when the price of the gear was inexpensive, but the quality beat out what you were getting. That was around 1983, 1984. Now you got big brands with entry-level lines. Fender with Squire with the Affinity. By the way, that Squire body that I'm working on, that I'm refurbishing, painting, that's an Infinity. It's a 2001 Squire Infinity. The Bullet series that I just mentioned, of course, and of course there's Harley Benton, basically the poster child, in my opinion, of modern budget gear. You got Behringer, we've talked about them, and their clones. Some of their clones cost less than a meal out. You can get some of their stuff for pretty cheap. But what changed? What changed? Let's see here. You grew up in the 70s. Bloody hell, you must be taking good care, bro. I'm 34 with more wrinkles. Well, yeah. Yeah. I'm getting up there, but I've had an interesting life, so maybe that attributes to my youthful looks. But yeah, I'm an old guy. Even that, I will admit that. My brother, who's 3 years older than me, won't admit that, but I'm willing to admit it. Well, production got better. CNC machines, cheaper labor overseas, in the case of the Japanese, better quality control in the case of the Japanese. And then when it moved over to Korea, you had, varied levels. The Japanese were known to be consistently good. The Koreans, the Chinese got better to the point where people are accepting their quality to be as good as the early Japanese. So there is that. So today's cheap is way better than we had back in the 80s when I was first starting out, or even the 90s, to be honest with you. But does that mean it's good enough? The motto of this channel is I'm good. So if I'm good, that means it's good enough. Is it really good enough for playing, for recording, for gigging? Well, that's what I kind of want to unpack tonight, because at the end of the day, that's really the gist of this. Does what I have, budget or not, cut the cloth in terms of being good enough to record, gig with? And the answer these days is generally with a little minimal amount of upgrading, maybe a little bit of work, yes. Back when I was growing up, with even the cork guitars didn't come in today. Yeah, it was the 80s, really. In the 70s, early 80s, it was pretty slim pickings. It was pretty bad. And, who is it for? Again, also. Because if you're a pro musician, are you going to have budget gear? Well, many years ago, I would say no. These days, I would say there's a great chance, yes. I can never say his name, Mike Rutherford from Genesis, on his solo gigs, plays a Squire, and Affinity, by the way, and he loves it. And so there have been guys who've taken Harley Bentons, did a little bit of work on them, and took them to Vegas and did a lot of gigging with them. So professional level gigging. So there is that. But for total beginners, you don't want to drop $2,000 on your first guitar unless you're Richie Rich. You just won't do it. Your parents certainly won't do it either. You want to test the waters. Your parents certainly want to test the waters to see if this is something that you're going to stick with, because they still have the whoopee cushion and the magic, trick kit that you gave up last year. So they want to test the waters on price as well. So primarily, that's where that market really was set aside for. Now, there's people like me, and probably a lot like you, hobbyist players, who might mod things, experiment, repaint, or need a backup instrument, and for travel, for example. And there's the flip side, the people who could buy expensive gear but choose cheap stuff because it can do the job, is generally falls within this category. So there's that. Man, the live chat is on fire. Let me catch up here. American made guitars aren't worth the hype. Well, who me? That is true now. Back in the 80s and 90s or 70s, even the 70s, even though they say the 70s stuff was not great, that's not true. Now it's equivalent. You can find just as good outside of the States. We drink too much, Tam Jing. Yeah, well, people look 60 at 30 lol. Yeah, that's funny. American guitars get more hype than other countries' brand, in my opinion. But yeah, because they control. America is the kingdom of the hype machine. So of course you're going to get more hype from that machine, and of course American guitars were the dream guitars. They were the aspirational guitars of the British players back in the '60s, the Japanese players to now, to be frank, and everybody really in Philippines, Cambodia. You know what I'm saying? The gist of that is that they still have cachet to them. Cheap electric guitars changed a lot between the mid '60s and the mid '70s. Yes, so we began to see more of the early Japanese imports coming in through secondary companies coming into the United States. It was the Japanese imports from the '70s going into the '80s. And they really hit full steam though when Fender did the contract with Fuji again and started producing the Squire and the Fender Japan series. And but there was a lot of companies that were importing the Japanese ones, and that's where you start to see improvements. But it wasn't enough to really fill the hole quite yet. Not until later. Not until like I said, 83, 84. I've got a 12-string Fender my mom got for her 21st. I love it. You hold on to it. 12-string Fenders are great. 40 quid. Are you mad? It's only a bottle of water. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Is a hot dog a sandwich? Yes, I would say a hot dog is a sandwich. There's bread, there's meat, and there's some kind of condiment in between. So yeah. Free Bill Cosby. I thought Bill was free. I think they should lock him up again. We're talking about budget gear. Yes, we are tonight, Stephen. Very much so, and welcome. I'm definitely not as good as my gear for sure. Well, we all want us. We're never as good as we want to be. Talented poor, so I'll stay with my gear. The motto of this channel to everybody who's new here is I'm good. That is the motto of the Upstairs to the Right music channel is I'm good. And what do I mean by that? It means that the equipment that I have, regardless of the price that I paid for it, is good enough to do the job. Now, the lower you go in price, the more homework it requires for you to find out exactly where those budget gems are. There are budget gems out there these days. Back again, like I said, when I was a teenager, there was not. Until I graduated, around the time I was graduating from high school. So there's that. And I'm good basically encompasses the theory that less is more. We're the anti-gas gear acquisition syndrome. In other words, I need this. I want to buy this. I want to buy this. No, this channel is about let's wait, let's think about this, and let's see if there are better alternatives for cheaper out there. Or maybe do the work yourself. Maybe do your work yourself. So just to give you guys, the new people, a little bit of a background of where we're coming from. American guitars are not American. Yeah, there is a little bit of cross stuff going between the Mexico factory and the Corona factory. So that is correct. Hello, big fan from India. Please say namaste. Namaste to you, sir. Namaste to you and to India always. Red Spice. Hey there, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I am, thank you. I hope you are too. Right back at you. Bro, you are living my dream life. Well, one man's ceiling is another man's floor. Trust me. It was boiling hot the last few days, and I am working in this condition is very difficult. But you'll get there. You'll get there. Hello from Anatolia to wherever you're from. We are here, Anatolia, we're Turkey, not too far from here. My good friend down the street is Turkish, and he drives from here to Turkey. He says it takes about a day or so from the Netherlands to Turkey, so I'm not that far away. Certainly flying, I can be there within an hour. So welcome to you, somebody in the neighborhood. Welcome. Yeah. When you do Namaste, make me happy, and so I'm glad to do that midnight. You are so welcome here. You don't even know. Great respect from Turkey. Yeah, great country, man. I am eager to get there. Like I said, I'm an hour's flight away, so you know that's going to happen, and I can't wait to have some good baklava. Actually, and some tea. I'm going to have tea and baklava at what's that hotel that does that service? I forget. And also, you can get a hookah there as well. I might even do that. Yeah, Istanbul is first, of course. So, getting back to the discussion, you know, cheap gear exists to be accessible, but is it inspiring? You know, I always talk about guitars having a certain kind of gravitas to them. In other words, when I hold a vintage guitar, not even a vintage guitar, when I hold a vintage guitar or a guitar of outstanding quality, you can feel it. The way that it feels, the tightness, it's what I call a tightness to it, is the best word that I can describe. And that can be inspiring to some people to have a vintage guitar, or maybe one played by somebody famous, or something along those. To have a vintage guitar can sometimes be an inspiring thing to some people. Are modern guitars better than vintage ones? Yes, they are. For the reasons that I listed, definitions I listed earlier. So there's that. You know, because I've owned cheap guitars that have really blown me away against some of the vintage ones that I've had. So now, of course, none of the guitars that I currently own that I play are any younger than 25, 24 years, but they blow me away. And one is from 2001, one I made myself from a 2003 parts Squire, and the other one is a 1974. So looking at that range and just the fit and feel across, what I'm trying to say is that some of them are really cheap, some of them are really old, but what it really comes down to is they blow me away for different reasons, and they're not expensive, relatively. So the CNC routing, when it came in, really opened up that market. The basic shape, the pocket depth, it's all done by machines now. You know, bridge alignment. So you won't get a misaligned neck like you used to get, although the Japanese didn't do that, and they were doing the 74 I have is a handmade guitar. They seem to get that right, but you know, frets in the wrong place is sometimes a problem. That doesn't occur so much. Are the frets really great? No. Most of the times, I would say with the budget guitars, 70% of the time, 80% of the time, between 70 and 80% of the time, you are going to have to do some fret work, and that is one of the small things, like I said, you'd have to do in order to get it pro level. But again, I don't have my tools here. Fret work is something that you can teach yourself. Don't be scared to do it. And of course, it doesn't require you doing any soldering or anything like that. So it is a first good step to make your budget guitar sing and do it yourself cheaply. It's cheaper to buy the tools than to have a luthier do it for you at this point, because the cost of the tools are down. The hardware is one of the things too that is improved. And if it isn't improved, there's a whole secondary market for aftermarket upgrades that didn't exist in the 70s, the 80s, and really not until the end of the 90s did you see this big aftermarket so you could upgrade things. So even in that regard, that's the second thing that I would look at with a budget guitar if I wanted to make it pro was the hardware. You can get better hardware for not a lot of money. Again, like I said, or used or a lot of different ways. Again, the idea is to get it done and get it as nice as cheaply as possible. I put a parts caster together with hand wound pickups made in Croatia for around $400 US. So it can be done, but you gotta, do your research, save your parts, or try to source them cheaply. But that's something that I would do. Third is the pickups. I just mentioned the pickups that I had done. Even budget pickups sound better than they did 20 years ago, by the way. By the way. Even the ceramic pickups sound good. The ceramic pickups from the 70s sound great. I still haven't found a modern ceramic bass pickup guitar that sounds as good as the ceramic Japanese pickups. But, there's that. But still, they sound good. So, really, these things are what you could do to a budget guitar in order to get it sounding pro. And these are things that you can do on a budget if you do your homework. The other part of this channel is do your homework. I'm good because I did my homework. Or sometimes just get lucky. Sometimes you'll stumble across a bargain, and it happens. So there's that. But the internet is your friend. The internet is your friend. And you can look at a Firefly guitar, for example. And there's a lot of examples of it. And you can decide, is that a budget guitar that I could work into being something that I could make mine, that could be my guitar, and that I could use for different applications? You have to find out. And that gets into the fact that some cheap guitars still suck. Now, I am saying that today the budget guitars are way better, or can't even be compared because they were non-existent to the time when I was a teenager. But still, budget guitars, even though I'm saying they're better, they can still suck, and therefore that's when you want to do your homework. Biggest problem is the QC. Finishing work is often done by people who are paid very little to do as many as they can within a certain amount of time. You guys ever see Andor, the Star Wars spinoff, and they were building parts for the Death Star, and they had to put those things together within a certain amount of time, or they got gruel for dinner as opposed to slop? Well, it's kind of like that, unfortunately, which is another one of the reasons why I'm against the overproduction of new guitars. But that's a separate subject. So you get rough fret ends, you get finish blemishes, or you get crooked hardware. The electronics can be noisy. You get cheap, thin wiring, cold solder joints. Not a huge deal if you can solder. Real big deal if you can't. Especially if you get it and you're a first-time player and you're like, why does this sound this way? It can completely turn you off from a guitar. So budget guitars, one of the cons is that if you're a new player and it's too budget of a guitar, it can actually turn you off from wanting to play. So there's that. There's that. Let me catch up here in the chat real quick. You can play 100 guitars, all the same builds and designs. Only one of them will play and sound amazing. Well, you got to find that one that speaks to you. We talk about that Carnegie channel. I'm sorry. Can I get a channel? Can I get a channel? I like that. Can I get a channel? I agree with that. You got to find the one that speaks to you. I played some of Neil Schoen's guitars once, and I didn't like any of them. That's just me, though. Some people might like them. I'd be very curious to know what gauge he had on those. I would imagine that he probably was stringing those with 11s. A lot of those guys do. Price doesn't really matter. You can put things together just right, and then magic happens. Agreed. And that is the point of tonight. Mr. Still Collins, tone is relative. Agreed. What sounds great, it has presence in the studio mixdown, might get lost in a mix in a live situation. Agreed. Experiment and A and B and stick with your ears first impressions. Now, everybody's idea of what a great tone is very subjective. We can all agree that Hendrix, Castles Made of Sand is a beautiful tone. We can all generally agree on that. We can't all generally agree whether or not, the tone from the Insane Clown Posse is great. So there is a little bit of a personal taste there and choice. They were 11s and the action was very high, so I knew it. Yeah, I don't, and why is that? The reason I kind of figured that, and I've been thinking about that, because Prince, Jesse Johnson said that he couldn't play Prince's guitar because it was strung, it was too high of an action, and it was strung with 13s. See, Prince and those, Neil Schoen, a lot of these guys were born in the 50s. And guitar strings were not widely available. And the ones that were, they didn't have a lot of choices of gauges. And a lot of the gauges, and sometimes they were using guitar strings, like the lightest gauge of acoustic guitar strings. And they didn't know how to set up a guitar. So they learned how to play on, and also Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie Ray Vaughan was playing on such, a high gauge that he was regularly taking skin off his ankle to glue it onto his fingers with super glue so he could play for that night. That's not a lie. It was his roadie who talked him down a couple of gauges. But all those older guys, that's my theory. It may or may not be true, but that's what I'm thinking. And the older guys that I knew when I was a teenager, they all played really heavy gauges, really heavy gauges. It wasn't into my kind of generation. I only played 9s and 10s. That's as high as I go. 9.5 is my sweet spot. Yeah, so I kind of figured that. The price of good enough has gone down, but the price of too shitty I also went very well. Yeah, they're blowing. I mean, if you buy a guitar in Temu, expect that. It's funny that you mentioned that, yeah. Jesse Jerome Johnson. No, I don't think Jesse's middle name is Jerome. But yeah, I guess it's not too bad if you detune them. Yeah, but no, Prince didn't. Prince played in a standard tuning with 13s. Okay, so yeah, this guy was about this tall with little itty bitty fingers. So, but there's that. Most of the guys were raised on flat wound strings as well. That's absolutely correct. That's also part of my theory. Electronics made up for all the tone from heavy gauge strings. Are you the voice of Tommy Chong? Leo? No, nobody can do Leo. Yeah. Everything he does is ADR. Yeah. So those are things. And, and the final thing, and this one is another subjective thing. Sometimes cheap gear just feels cheap. It's like I told you about that gravitas that you feel when you have a quality instrument in your hand. Plasticky knobs, the knobs are my thing. If they're really cheap knobs, then that's the first thing that's got to go for some nice quality knobs. Too light of a body. I know everybody wants to have light guitars these days, I guess, for whatever reasons, so they can sling them around their body, or but a light guitar still feels cheap to me. two-dimensional sounding pickups. I think that most of the, I hate to say it, but the modern Gibson wines are very two-dimensional to me. You listen to an old set of Birchbuckers. I'm finally saying that correctly the first time. What a miracle. Uh, Birchbuckers, if you listen to a new set versus an old set, there's really a tonal difference there. If you played high in gear, you'll feel the difference, is the point. They can still, you can still be high in gear with two-dimensional sounding pickups, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Can you gig with cheap gear? Can you make a record with it? My take, absolutely. Absolutely. Without question. With a little bit of context. Let me catch up here in the chat. Yeah, no weight, no tone. Hence the Les Paul. Well, people, generally guys my age don't like heavy guitars. One of the reasons I stopped chasing after the perfect Les Paul is because I realized that no Les Paul was going to be right for me because I just can't, 8.5 is my sweet spot and that's just not happening. I find the Strat to be a far more comfortable guitar. However, my Strats vary in weight. This one I'm painting right now would be the lightest, around 7.5 pounds. Then it jumps to 8.5 pounds for my Partcaster, and a little bit over 9, between 9 and 9.5 pounds. My weight is scale's a little off on the new one. I prefer that heavier guitar. It's funny. I don't like heavy heavy Les Pauls, but the Strat, for some reason, it spreads the butter out a little bit better. So it's much easier to digest, so to speak. Give me your number. I want to show you my sister. Scott, why did you delete him, man? I was about to get his sister's number. Doggone it. Les Pauls, yeah. Agreed, my first guitar was a Fender Music Master. Yeah, nice one. If you're a big enough guy and don't mind the weight, some of those heavy 70 Fenders are not as bad as the market suggests. I agree, Still Collins. I agree because I've got a 70 Strat and 74, and it's a 9-pounder, which was considered at that time to be lightweight. So it's a lightweight one, but I like it. It gives gravitas to it. When I pick it up, I feel like I've got something in my hand. When I pick up that Squire Affinity, not so much. Not so much. Not so much. A good Les Paul special. Yeah, I had a couple Les Pauls. I've had 3 Les Pauls special. Wow, that was really up in the camera. Ooh, 3D effect. I had 3. I had 3 Les Paul specials so far. All of them were Epiphone. Well, 2 were Epiphones and 1 was a Harley Benton. And I just don't know. I just can't. I played with the pickups, swapping the P90s in. They were all P90, by the way. Does that make a difference? I don't know. Maybe. I've had a few, though. Cheers to the guitar crew. Cheers to you, Mike. Welcome, sir. Good to have you here. Can I get a channel? My favorite Les Paul custom is the 83. Ooh, that's a nice one. The 83 Blonde. I know. Ooh, and you can't find, it's funny, they haven't really put that out in reissue, have they? There are touring musicians who use Squire Classic vibes, Harley Benton basses, or cheap pedals, but they often do a bit of work. Upgrade the nut is the first thing they all do. Quality nut. That sounded bad. You guys know what I mean. The nut is the part of the guitar that the string, anyway. A quality nut, a good nut. No, that's not even better. That's not better. Anyway, replacing the nut on your guitar will, especially with a bone one or a nice new bone one, will make a big difference. And so in terms of keeping it in tune, that's the reason they're doing it, is the tuning issues. Not for tune. Swap out the tuners if you need to. Sometimes you don't. and add better pickups. Now, I say better pickups, but again, the stock pickups might just be fine the way they are. My 2001 Affinity I'm working on, this is the original plate to it. So the guitar that I'm painting right now, these original knobs, original pickups. These are ceramic pickups. I'm going to put shielding in the body of that guitar as well, so it'll be shielded, on both sides. But frankly speaking, these 2001, early 2000 Squier pickups have been used for professional recordings. Justin Bieber had a song a couple of years ago where the guy used his 2001, same run as this one, to record that Justin Bieber tune, and and it's the original pickups. He didn't swap the pickups. I'm not going to swap those pickups out either, because again, these are a set of ceramic pickups, cheap pickups, but damn, do they sound good. They sound really good. Do they sound like ceramic pickups? Yes, but they're a good sounding set of ceramic pickups, if you know it. We did a shootout once. Everybody was like, yeah, that's a ceramic. You can pick it out, but it's a good tone. I think the real test is whether the gear stays in tune. I think that's your first step. Is it reasonably reliable? In other words, when you plug it in, are you getting shorts when you toggle things? If it's reliable and it doesn't distract you from playing, that's a good first step. That's a good place to be with a budget guitar. I've tracked down entire guitar parts with a $100 Squier. Does it feel the same as my as my higher end Strats? No, but honestly speaking, in a mix, as I've pointed out, I can use that 2001 Squier when it's done just as much as I can use the 74 Greco or 74 Fender or whatever for that matter. So in a recording situation, it doesn't really, it's just as long, again, like I said, you're getting a good tone to tape, so to speak. If you can do a setup, fix wiring, and the limits of how much you should be spending, and if you're doing the work yourself, then you're keeping the cost down. Cheap gear can absolutely do the job. The bigger danger is the false economy. You buy cheap, then spend more modding it than you would have spent just buying something mid-tier. So you have to know how to draw the line. It's not real economy. It's what I call false economy. Because, well, I bought a budget guitar, I bought this guitar for $100, but I put $1,000 into it. Man, Frankenstein didn't put, 1,000 more bucks into the monster. Well, he would look a lot better with, blue eyes and less of a flat head. But, let's keep to the budget here. Same thing. So don't get into the false economy of it. Just because you bought a budget thing, and if you're going to, put all that money into it, you're really not doing yourself a lot of favor there. You should have just gone with a mid-tier guitar. And when you get into mid-tier guitars would be $500 and up, maybe $600 in some people's thoughts, but anywhere between $500 and $600. Then a lot of these other things are moot because they usually have a quality nut. The tuners are usually really nice, and the appointments are well done. So there's that. But yeah, catch up here in the chat. Was Bob Marley known to play Strats? No, Bob Marley played Telecaster, a Les Paul Special. I cannot remember in my feeble memory him with a Strat. Mike says, I like how you upgraded the 59 Epiphone with better electronics. It makes a huge difference on the lower budget. Yeah, within keeping it within, I kept it within, and when I was done with that Les Paul, those are the pickups now that are in my Frankenstein Squire, when I turned it into an HH. And yeah, I dig the tone of those pickups, whether it's in they're in a Les Paul or whether they're in that Strat. In the Les Paul, they sounded Les Paul-y. In this Strat, in an HH configuration, they actually sound like an SG. Just saying. Miss Ba, hello, Uncle. I'm from India. Where are you from? How are you doing now? Do you have any dog or cats? Yeah, I've got 2 dogs and 2 cats. And when the neighbors need me to, I'll have on any given day 3 dogs and 2 cats. Oh Lord, I got to get out of here. You said that before, creativeness. I appreciate you sticking around, though. You hung around a lot longer than I thought. Why are your followers not increased? Well, I don't know, but I'm not really worried about that, boss, because the folks that I have here are really, really, really near and dear to me. And they're always here for me, and I'm always here for them. I'm going to have a tooth pulled on my wisdom tooth. My dentist tells me has to come out. So we're going to see how fun that's going to be. If there's going to be a live stream on the 11th is the day that I have to have it done. So that's in 10 days or so, but 9 days, over a week from now. But we'll see how that goes. But I hope to be able to pull through. If not, that will be the exception. I'll let you guys know ahead of time. I have a 74 Super Lead, nice. And early Mesa Boogie with the preamp. Yeah, Prince was a big Mesa Boogie guy, and his tone, his best tone was always through a Mesa Boogie, and he wouldn't let anybody else in the band have a Mesa Boogie. Subscribe done. Thank you, boss. I appreciate it. If you build it, they shall come, and like I said, I got quality people like you showing up. If it's one at a time, that's fine with me. Welcome. My gear is way better than I am. Well, yeah, it fluctuates. I've had really great gear and I've had budget gear, but I've recorded using both. And it didn't stop me either way. And I think that's the main point of what I was talking about there is having a personal checklist for budget gear. Number one is, for me, is to play before you pay. But these days, that's really getting much more difficult to do. But if you can, first thing is feel for sharp frets. If the fret job is iffy, then other things are going to be iffy. If the fret job is decent and good, chances are you probably got everything else is going to be decent and good. And that's across the board. I've really found that to be true. Have a plan. Is this something you're buying to mod? Or would you be happy to spend a little extra to spin it up? Or is it something that you're buying that's just as is for yourself or for a family member? Do your research. Should have put this as number one. I cannot emphasize this enough to you guys, the importance of always doing your research. Don't be lazy. You got no excuse. You got a phone in your hand and at least 1 or 2 computers at home. And using those devices, you can look up a lot of pertinent information that will help you on your way to make right decisions regarding your gear. And sometimes talk you out of it. Don't get precious. What do I mean by that? Cheap gear is a tool, not an heirloom. If you outgrow it, pass it on. I did that. That's why I don't have any guitars, from one of the reasons, probably one of the reasons that my first Squire went away, is because I have a tendency, when I outgrow something, I give it to somebody else so they can grow with it. I know it's good, and I moved on to the next thing. I've really only had 1 or 2 guitars at a time in a bass. An electric, an acoustic, and a bass guitar. And a mandolin. I've always had about 4. And that's been, that it's got as high as 10 and as low as as 3. But don't get precious with things. If it's time to move it on to somebody else, and they'll appreciate it. You're doing the right thing. And remember the end goal. If it makes you want to play, it's worth it. Whether it's 500 or 5,000. If you sat down and you immediately started getting into it and you vibed with it and it made you write a tune or practice something that you got to play for a gig or something like that, regardless. If it's something that speaks to you, then probably that's the one. Probably that's the one. So is modern cheap gear good? My verdict, it's better than ever. Everybody always asks me that question, so you guys know where I stand now. I think it's better than ever. And sometimes it's exactly what you need at the price that works for you too. The catch is knowing what you're getting. What you're willing to fix, and not expecting a $200 guitar to feel like a $2,000 guitar. It's not going to happen. And sometimes, no matter how much you can put $2,000 into it, it still won't feel like a $2,000 guitar. Don't get into the false economy. Have a plan. At the end of the day, good music comes from your hands and ears, not your wallet. And that's my take. You know, yeah, I really feel that way. Is it a cool thing to have vintage pedals like I do, or some vintage guitars like I do? Sure, great, absolutely fantastic. Do I need it to write a tune like I did last week? No, no. I've done the same with less, which is a real test for you. You know, what's the least amount that you can get the job done with, and then that's your place to start. Anything above that, as I've said before, famously 1,000 times, and I'll say it for the new people tonight, anything above the basics is gravy. And treat it as such. Don't let the gravy drown you. I'll say it again. Don't let the gravy, the excess, drown you. For making decisions in terms of what to play, from financial decisions where really you don't need this stuff, this money could be tied up somewhere else better, those kind of things. Whether it's budget or not, at this point, at this stage of the game, you got a pretty good chance of getting something good if you do your homework. I always enjoy the SGs. They feel very nice, but yeah, I like SGs too. That's the other guitar. If I is an SG, but I don't know. I've gotten into these Strats now. I really find them comfortable. And it's funny. I grab that 74 Greco when I'm on a strum, when I'm on a play, practice, whatever. Even though it's the heaviest of the 3 at this point, you know, that's the one I grab. I have a 33 Martin ukulele. I don't know what to do with it. It was my granddad's. It's worth a boatload. Well, I would certainly take it to a luthier, have it checked out, make sure that it stays tuned up and within playing. Play it, strum it every now and then to keep it in action, and just hold on to it, cherish it. Keep it in the family. There's certainly somebody in your family that you can pass it on to. My Uncle Carlton, Blues Hall of Famer, is leaving me his guitar collection. And then when I'm done, whatever, at this stage of the game, very little, because I have my own that I'm happy with, do with it, I will pass it on to a niece or nephew in the family. So this stuff, the good stuff, stays in the family. I've had Kevin Ryan acoustic, but I'm scared to play it because it costs way too much to commission. Yeah, if it's too pretty to play, then again, that's gravy. And this is a good example of getting drowned by the gravy. If you're not playing it, unless you're really into it as wall art, you know, that money could be spent somewhere else. Funny Euro ambulance signs. Yeah, you guys hear it? Yeah, they're funny. Not so funny when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to sleep. I bet they're better working audio-wise than the North American. Yeah. Do you like turkey? Sure, I do. Love their sandwiches. And I'm not being facetious. You know, if you guys want to have the guy down the street, the turkey shop down the street, ooh, their food, good stuff. All right, um, you know, Scott, you were getting into a discussion about bad lyrics. You had mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about riffing about modern lyrics and how bad they are. I'd like to read. I thought about that, and I thought to myself, bad lyric writing amongst really popular groups is nothing new. Yeah, thank you so much. Can I get a channel? Thank you so much, brother, for being. Lots of love back at you too. Thank you for being here. I'm going to read some lyrics for you that were written in 1983, November 21st of 1983. And it is an example of proving that there were bad lyrics even back then, 40 years ago. And I'm going to read this. By the time I get to the chorus, and by the way, the choruses are 4 lines, and the chorus is this really interesting stuff here. But anyway, shackled and raised for a shining crowd. They want you to speak, but the music is louder than all of their roar with the heat of the planet's core. That's the first verse, which, by the way, is the only verse because it immediately goes into the chorus. But the shadows are on your side as soon as the lights go down. In the darkest place you can find, ye belong to the hands of the night. Anybody want to guess from that chorus? That was a chorus, by the way. Who wrote this one? Second verse. Promises made with a distant friend. Truth should be known, it can only bend to the tune of its own. Hey, you'll never hear that voice again. For some reason, verse 2 has a second part. Scandal in white on a tangled vine, with everybody to say you're having the time of your life when your life is on the slide. It's not Richard Marx. No, it's not. But no. Richard Marx is a fantastic lyricist. So no, it's not Richard Marx. But you're getting warm. But the shadows are on your side as soon as the lights go down. In the darkest place you can find, you belong to the hands of the night. This is The Shadows Are on Your Side from the fantastic album released in 1983 by Duran Duran. This is Simon, what's his name? Simon Le Bon's work. Now, everybody has at least 1 or 2 Duran Duran songs that they like. My favorite one is a very unknown B-side. You would have to have bought the A-side of Rio on the recorded version in order to hear this, a song called Room 7609, Late Bar. That's my favorite Duran Duran song. I've liked that since 82, 83. But lyrically, I always thought that these are the worst lyrics ever. Of all the British groups, you look at the Rhythmics, pretty decent lyrics. You look at Big Country or even Dexy's Midnight Runners, with Come On Eileen. These are great lyricists. Our House, in the middle of our street, our house was our castle and our keep. That's great stuff. This stuff is bad. So there's always been popular songs out there that had bad lyrics. And I always thought that Duran Duran had some very nice textures to their music, but their lyrics were ass. And that proves it. I still hate Duran Duran as much as I did in the 80s, Mike says. Duran needed cool videos. Yeah, they were the video. They started that video revolution. I don't hate. Robert Smith was a genius. Saturday waits, Sunday never hesitates. Saturday waits, Sunday always hesitates, but Friday never comes too late. One of my favorite songs of all time. It's Friday, I'm in Love. No lyrics, Lizad. Struck the Nines. To see you eat in the middle of the night, spinning like a sheik round and round. You know, just great stuff. Great lyrics. Yeah. You look like a psycho, but a genius nevertheless. Madness, Our House is a great prop tune. Yeah, with great lyrics. Until Iceland bought the rights to it, and now when you see an Iceland commercial in the UK, you get treated to that song. But anyway, I digress. You know, lyrics, bad lyrics, great lyrics have always been around. So I wouldn't say that the lyric now, of course, with the advent of mumble rap and all that other stuff, which I don't consider music. I would be honest with you guys. I know this sounds ultra snobby of me, but I don't consider 90% of modern rap to be music at all, of any kind of lyrical, musical, or any kind of value whatsoever. 90%. Starting from, I would say, around 2010. In my estimation. And before that, 50%. And before that, in the very beginning, most of it was good. It just went downhill real fast for reasons. Maybe I'll talk about that someday. Ghost Town by the Specials. This town is coming like a ghost town. Yeah, I love that one. You know, just, you know, they also had Madness the Specials also had another song. They had a couple of songs that I really like. Great lyrics. But bad lyrics have always been with us. They've always been with us. It's nothing new. And the worst of the worst is Simon Le Bon. And yet, he was one of the most popular. His band. It's just, you know, one of those things. Chick singers today all sound like mouth squeakers and wind. Yeah, that's why I said, you know, I like Lana Del Rey because she's got some kind of value to her voice. But I agree with that. But just sticking on, you know, not talking about the performance, but the lyrical content. So bad lyrics are not a modern kind of plague. They've always been there. But I think the production covered them up. I think the production values these days are so low that they can't even really do that anymore. Nor do I think that the IQ of some of these people who are writing these lyrics, especially in the rap field, is very high. I can say that. You're as intelligent as the level of the entertainment you take in. That's not my phrase. That comes from an old school rapper. And he won't listen to the new stuff. And that was his end. He and I are in complete simpatico with that sentiment for that exact reason. It's not music. They're trying to imitate Langston Hughes. There are no Langston Hughes. I understand that. They're in no way, shape, or because we had to study Langston Hughes. I'm an English major. And no way, shape, or form do they. And again, it's a race to the bottom. So there is that. Best lyrics ever. I love Langston Hughes. Yeah. Langston Hughes is a fraternity brother of mine. Let me click on that. What is the best lyrics ever? Let's see. Give me all your money. Yeah, everybody check out Scott's Give Me All Your Money. Check it out, guys. Go over to Scott. I'm going to hit a like here now. And I don't want to play this, Scott, because then YouTube will ding me for playing your music. Everybody go over to Scott's channel and take a listen to this. And if you haven't subscribed to Scott's channel yet, which you guys should have done the last time I told you to go over there, go over his channel and subscribe. Yeah, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to check this out. Thank you, Scott. So, guys, I'm not reading from the book tonight. We'll save that for Sunday because I'm in a good place right now. And again, every time I get into that book, it starts me going in down because I can read that book and then I can reference other things that I know, and then that sets me down my rabbit holes. Right now, I'm going through a theology study. Believe it or not, man shall not live on guitars alone. I'm going through a theology study. And a theology study that leads you down to a lot of dark places. And so, you have to be careful about that. And that's why the last two live streams I've refrained from reading from them. We're going to get back into it on Sunday, and we're going to be diving back down. But tonight, I like the vibe of things. I like how it went. We had a lot of great people showing up, a lot of new subscribers subscribing. Do not let Scott get demonetized. Yeah. Is that so? What book exactly are you reading? Honest curiosity. Well, I'm reading several. I don't like to get into it, but I'm rereading the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jasher, the Book of Giants. I'm reading through Josephus books because I have them here in my library regarding giants. I'm specifically going back to Genesis chapter 6. If you guys haven't read it, you can look it up online, read that, and then understand what it means. Get into the Hebrew, get into the Greek. That's what I mean when I'm studying theology for my own personal growth. And so, but that particular study, I read and don't watch TV. Well, I watch TV because I know where TV comes from. I know what its purpose is. I don't let it program me, but I do let it entertain me when you start getting into theology studies like that, frankly, guys, it can lead you down into some dark places. So I didn't want to get into that because I've been getting to other places, and I enjoyed tonight's discussion. I study law as a hobby. My brother is a lawyer. He studied law as a hobby, and he's not a lawyer by trade, but he has his law license. I want you to get paid, my brother. Well, honestly, guys, I get my reward, and I will say this before I sign out again, is you showing up and listening to what I have to say. I think that what I have to say is something that could be of value, and therefore the value that I give to you from that, I receive back in your attendance. And just being here is good enough. I have a business that, believe it or not, is actually, after 4 years, is starting to turn a decent profit. I have a side hustle that comes in and out every few months, and I live comfortably. So I cannot complain. Give me not too much nor too little, just right in between. But I appreciate the sentiments. Yeah, right here talking to you guys is a great reward for me. So I appreciate you guys showing up to the live stream and listening to the thoughts behind and it lists the veil of law. I agree with that. Correct. Can I get a channel? One of the reasons is, of course, understanding those things and a lot of other things. There's a lot of weird stuff out there, guys. I have traveled the world. I have lived in 5 countries. And I have lived literally around the world, starting in the States to Japan, then Japan to UK, and then from UK back to LA, then LA to Japan, then Japan to Singapore, and then Singapore. I've traversed the planet. And in that time, I've climbed the steps of Mount Everest myself. As a kid, if you told me that I would be, at the foot of Mount Everest, I wouldn't have believed you. And I've seen and heard a lot of weird shit. And it just gets to the point where you can't ignore it. So it's a good idea to have a little bit of knowledge about what that stuff was and is in order to better help you move on. And so I do that in my hobby sometimes. Guitar is my profession, so I have to study it, so I know a lot about it. My real study really is, honestly, theology. So there is that, guys. But either way, you have to do your homework. It all gets back to doing your homework. So there's that. Mike, are Japanese guitar players into double necks? Absolutely. Anything that Jimmy Page did, those guys are going to copy. And I'm not being facetious. I'm being honest. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious. Thank you, Can I Get a Channel? I appreciate it. Back at you. And to all you guys, as long as we're speaking of the correct God, because there's many out there. In any case, guys, you guys have a good rest of the week. I will see you here on Sunday. I'm going to film myself and have a little talk while I'm doing the buff and shine on that guitar. I'm going to share that with you. So that will be in my regular content coming up this week. And anyway, you guys, do I like the Beach Boys? Yes, I do, very much. Great show, guys. Thank you so much. You take care and try to stay cool if you're in a hot place like I am. And be safe out there. Drink lots of water. Keep out of the sun and be good, guys. See ya. Bye.